Last year, around this time, I was staring down the barrel of the second Trump administration, worried about money, worried about my trans sisters and brothers across the country, but especially in red states. And I was worried I felt like I was the only one in my throuple trying to fix our issues, all while watching another relationship collapse down around my ears. I tried to work through some of those concerns through poetry after stumbling across Cale Prall's poetry collection Chimera in a local bookstore. One of those poems I actually still am kind of proud of. Another, less so. A third ended up as more of a short story meets a free verse poem, which I realized I never shared publicly. It was sort of specific to Christmas, and I felt odd posting it after the fact. Plus, everyone who read it burst into tears. This year, that throuple has shattered. One has already moved away, the other is in town, but we're getting a divorce. I'm still worried about my trans siblings, but even more so in blue states that so many have fled into while now being openly betrayed by the Democrats who still expect our votes, even while they demand we accept a constant onslaught of dehumanization and vilification. I'm still worried about money. My girlfriend and I have been job hunting since April, and the closest either of us have come was what turned out to be a generally more well-constructed scam than the usual fare. So I've thrown myself into, this creation crap. Writing, scripting, streaming, trying to use my knowledge and skills to entertain and inform. I love it so much. It's the most myself I've ever felt while doing a job, but it doesn't pay great. I suppose what I'm trying to say is, if you enjoy what I do, please consider supporting my Patreon or Coffee for as little as $1 a month. I try to keep nearly everything I do available to everyone, but that's only possible because of the generosity of a small group of amazing people. So as we head into Muttday Morning News number 20, I'd like to thank all of them at the top of the show for once. Thank you very much to April, Fragile Paper, Manfred, Pinball Witch, Pimento, Rose, and Yalk. As a final bit of sappiness for myself, I'd like to read the opening poem from, and which shares a name with, Cale Prall's 2024 poetry collection Chimera that so enthralled me when I found it some 13 odd months ago. All I want is for you to see the soft and the sharp parts of me. Know that they are good and honor them, even when they do not match the picture of me that lives inside your head. Chimera. Oof. And welcome to Muttday Morning News. I am the titular Mutt Fen. Now let's get to some news. So this story broke as I was ending the stream and live recording, so I'm throwing it in now. This is still a developing story. Like I said, I caught it as it was breaking. Vince Zampella, the co-founder of Infinity Ward and Respawn Entertainment, who has also been running and effectively leading the development of Battlefield 6 for EA, died on Sunday afternoon around 12:45. He, or whoever was driving the car, there were two people in it, both were killed, was driving down the Angel Crest Highway in Southern California and went over an embankment. And yeah, my condolences, and I assume and would hope my audience's condolences to Zampella's family, because that is random and atrocious and unspeakably awful. Kindly hold Zampella's family in your heart with all the other folks I'm asking you to hold in your heart. As we descend further into the holiday season, a recession, and another year of the presupposed darkness, cruelty, and ineffectuality from the neoliberal party posturing as an opposition party, I'm going to make an effort to keep this episode Not necessarily short, but not long, and if I can help it, maybe not depressing? Okay, I know it's ironic I said not depressing after the Zampella thing, but you find a better place in this week to put it, sorry. Not saccharine, loaded down with artificial sweetness and light, but maybe a bit more vicious, let's say. I've rarely restrained my bite when it comes to fascists, collaborators, tech gentry, transphobes, TERFs, gender criticals, or corpos, but in today's show, I'm going to celebrate their failures a little bit more openly. I did say one point of obedience training as a section is to acknowledge that we, the people, the governed, have just as much, if not significantly more, power to dictate the rules by which our leaders and society should operate as our elected representatives and the oligarchs they much more openly obey before heeding their constituents. To that end, this week's obedience training is going to focus a bit on fascists who got what they deserved. Often, what they called to be done unto others now visited upon themselves, though usually in a much lighter format. Yeah. First up, in the realms of FAFO, for the record, yes, I loathe having to use that acronym instead of the words, so YouTube doesn't hide my work from view, especially since our first idiot is a man who made his entire career exploiting people's suffering and at least one death by suicide on YouTube. Yes, if you missed it, Jake Paul decided to challenge another boxer. The former prank YouTuber has fancied himself a professional boxer since 2020 when he won a not all that staggering 6 matches in a row before facing his first professional boxer, Tommy Fury, in 2023, who kicked his ass. Yeah, those 6 matches, and most of the subsequent ones since, not with boxers, but with former MMA fighters in boxing matches, some of whom have even been alleged to have taken dives for cash, a trend which continued as Jake Paul kept challenging MMA and former retired MMA fighters to boxing matches through 2024 and 2025, including that fight with convicted rapist Mike Tyson in November of last year. Paul won that fight, but for context, Tyson was, again, only the third actual boxer Paul faced in the ring, had been retired from boxing for more than a few months shy of 20 years, and was in such poor health the match was delayed 4 months after a health scare Tyson later attributed to ulcers. Oh, and Tyson is 31 years older than Jake Paul. Oh, for nodding out loud, of course, the white supremacist crypto-hawking dude with at least 2 sexual assault allegations, one of which was also pedophilic, is filthy rich and younger than me by 5 years. On December 19th, Jake Paul had his 4th boxing match against an actual boxer, and after making the very normal decision to come out in ring gear aping the most vitriolically hateful, racist, anti-union and homophobic man in wrestling's storied history of the same, second only really to Vince McMahon himself, the crypto-hawking alleged rapist and open racist was driven into the turnbuckle by his opponent, 2-time former heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. I, for one, would question Jake Paul's sanity, well, to begin with. Dude clearly has many issues he's not dealing with, but especially to face a black man who's been boxing since 2007 and who won Olympic boxing gold in 2012, all before even starting his still going strong pro career wearing the regalia of a man who just adored throwing around the N-word, who then begged for fan forgiveness of that back in 2015 before going right back into the racist tool bag after his reinstatement to the Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2018. And oh boy, howdy did Anthony Joshua disabuse this little twit of his braggadocio. I mean, look at his face. Have you ever seen someone's realization and fear that, oh no, this is a real fight, captured so clearly in a single photo? The knockout punch to follow this image reportedly broke Jake Paul's jaw in 2 places, to which this mutt can only say, good. Maybe you should remember that feeling the next time you, allegedly, grope a teenager or force an employee to suck you off, Jake Paul. Also, watch out, some of the images being shared around social media of Paul's injuries are very obviously AI generated. The x-rays Paul posted to Instagram seem to be real, but I've seen no others that weren't pretty obviously fake. At least some of them you could tell because he had get well soon cards. And not to be outdone in the manosphere battle of worst decision-making, Andrew Tate, himself a former kickboxer and literal single-time MMA fighter, stepped into the ring for the first time since he was charged with rape, human trafficking, and running and creating an organized crime business which sold women into virtual sexual slavery in 2023. Not even the first time he was charged with most of that, by the way. He's been a suspect in multiple rape, sexual trafficking, child sexual abuse, child sexual trafficking, money laundering, and witness tampering cases in the US, UK, and Romania going back to at least 2016. Romania has also added on several of those counts since his 2023 arrest. While Tate is allowed into the US, the dictator of this country having publicly quashed any attempts to bring Andrew Tate or his less well-known but nearly always embroiled in the same schemes brother Tristan Tate to justice. The match was held in, can you guess? Sorry, if you guessed Riyadh, you were close, but we're looking for the other human rights nightmare capital built on obscene oil money, Dubai. Tate was, again, in a boxing match. I really don't get why these MMA fighters and kickboxers and such keep heading into the boxing matches. Even with a relative newbie like Tate's opponent, Chase Demure, dude can't even throw a decent left jab. Just sort of pawed at Tate's gloves with his left hand, but then what would you expect from a former football player who only pivoted to boxing in 2022 when acting didn't really pan out? But it doesn't matter if only your right hand has any power if your opponent is a washed-up manosphere blogger who's visibly burning brain cells, remembering to not throw kicks. Guess a 29-year-old dude is harder to handle than the women and children the Tate brothers have, again allegedly, spent their post-kickboxing careers trafficking and sexually abusing. From the 5th round on, Demure just kept throwing this neon sign-posted uppercut, like the sort of stuff you'd throw if you were trying to set your opponent up to take you for a dive, but it just kept landing. Tate just didn't seem to see it coming at any point, and he just kept taking the uppercuts across his mostly non-existent chin and face. By the end of round 6, Tate was left wearing a near-proper crimson mask, to say nothing of how flat-footed and drained he'd been since round 3. It was a pathetic showing from even my absurdly low estimation of Andrew Tate. It doesn't come close to paying for the harm he's done to women and children the world over, but it is good to see a monster bloodied and brought low by a newbie boxer who, frankly, needs to work on his fundamentals. See, this is the fun part about doing these live, is I can get informed by my own chat that I missed that this morning Andrew Tate admitted on Twitter that he fixed the match, and I don't believe that, quite frankly. I definitely believe that he bet against himself. I don't honestly believe he fixed the match because he looked dead. Like, he did not look... I said that it looked like his opponent was setting him up to knock, like, the football player... I'm trying to remember his name. I can't see it in front of me right now. It looked like he was being set up to take a dive, but Tate just kept taking ridiculous blows, but also, where did you make the bet? And I don't, where, what, you admitted match fixing. Was the bet in crypto? Like, that's the only way I can think of for it not getting immediately yoinked back. It's also Andrew Tate, and he lies constantly, so I don't even know if this is true. He's a shameless profiteer. But it wasn't just the big names in manosphere BS and profiteering off the sexual exploitation of women and children like Andrew Tate and Jake Paul, who got some just desserts this last week. Before I get to that, I am going to preemptively head off one issue at the pass. While the wives of some fascists and Nazis are assuredly their victims, or have a change of heart, such as Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, who has basically spent her entire time separated from him, trying to give away all of his money. Many, like, say, Erica Kirk, Ushana Vance, Melania Trump, are supporters and beneficiaries of their husbands' policies, ideologies, and choices. Some of their children are, too. Again, look at every one of Trump's children. Yes, even Barron, who is over 18 now, who Trump credits with winning him the election by helping him lock the Gen Z conservatives on TikTok. So, when a wife stands by her neo-Nazi or fascist husband, much less actively supports his vitriol, I do not, nor should you, feel bad for them, but instead name them as they are, the same thing the Democrats are trying to be to Trump. Collaborators. They make choices which harm many to benefit themselves, and must face the consequences of their actions, like we all should have to. I will feel pity for the child of one of those, not because they will go without a father. The nuclear family is a selling point of the patriarchal system, giving every proper man a little fiefdom where he may reign as God King over a wife, mother, and the children he owns in all but name. No, I pity the young children who will now grow up with only a mother who followed a neo-Nazi willingly, who may have nowhere else to turn to but deeper into that community, who will now grow up supported only by her income as the Trump administration and those copying him across Europe strip away safety nets while driving up the price of healthcare, of food, of everything to satisfy their pathetic nationalistic egos and line their already cancerous pocketbooks. But I do not feel pity for a child growing up without the tyranny of a neo-Nazi for a father. That out of the way, now we can joke, if darkly, as a less well-known neo-Nazi died last week due to his own abject stupidity. No, I do not know if he had a wife or children, but I wanted that out of the way first. A member of the Pacific Northwest Wolf Pack, an openly neo-Nazi separatist group based in Washington and famous for grooming children into Nazism, had a member who will go unnamed die last week. While visiting California, he reportedly fell out of a tree to his death while seeking mistletoe. Dude, it's California. The Boy Scouts sell mistletoe at like every other grocery store for a pittance. I know. I remember doing it since we didn't get to sell something people actually wanted, like cookies. Just had to throw that out there in case someone thinks, ooh, the Boy Scouts will unqueer and untrans my child. No, my old man tried it too. All he got to show for it was a trans daughter who still hates his guts well after he's dust, and who can kind of whittle, arch, and tie knots. The PNW Wolf Pack are trying to fundraise at least $6,500 to see his body return to their compound in rural Washington so they may prepare his body in the traditional way of our ancestors, which is kind of a weird way to describe a religious practice they claim to believe in, and which they totally aren't just paying lip service to out of deference to the extra wackadoo Nazis of the Thule Society. Oh, I skipped that, didn't I? Yeah, the PNW Wolfpack are, let's say, religiously hard to pin down because they try to split the difference between Norse paganism, what that MAGA shaman dude practices, and Odinists, who are... Okay, you know how there are those Christians who use out-of-context biblical quotes, sometimes even from Apocrypha unique to their sect, or lines from the Old Testament which modern Christians don't hold as rules for themselves, but will still use to justify their bigotry, especially homophobia and transphobia, effectively calling into question their understanding of their own scripture and its precepts? Odinists are basically that, but they're working from the Thule Society version of Norse beliefs, which feature massive fabrications to justify their whole master race piss. Also, they're an overt organized hate group of neo-Nazis, in case that bit wasn't obvious. They just play it being a religion too. The PNW Wolf Pack have ties to them, but dance around being overt Odinists. If you're trans, you probably already know the name Ryan McDonough. He's the Dr. Alaskan Governor Mike Dunleavy appointed to the state medical board in August to get enough votes to ban healthcare for trans children and recommend tightening Alaska's anti-abortion laws around the state's women. Know how I said he was appointed in August? Well, those votes took place on August 15th. Do you know what happened on July 31st, though? Per an affidavit from a Department of Homeland Security officer, Dropbox sent the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children a notification of child sexual abuse imagery, better known as CSAM, which was uploaded to their service. It traced back to a Dropbox account of the same Ryan McDonough. On August 10th, again, the vote was on August 15th, Dropbox sent a notice of a video of yet another child being sexually abused, which just so happened to once again lead back to Ryan McDonough's Dropbox account, this time looping in the Anchorage police. They put in for a search warrant on his ISP, Google, and Dropbox accounts, and got a look in sometime in October, which is maybe the most horrifying length of time I've ever heard, and found, quote, numerous folders that contained videos of young boys and girls, including some infants, being sexually abused. Around this time, Ryan McDonough also stopped attending the medical board meetings. He wasn't present for the October or November meetings and was removed from the official roster before the December meeting. He was arrested and his computer and other devices seized on December 11th. He was released from jail the night of the 12th on a $50,000 performance bond. His corpse burned in his house less than 24 hours later. And now comes the part where I start to sound a bit nutty. I can't find a record of when he was appointed to the state medical board. Everywhere I can find just says August. But Alaskan medical board members are appointed by the governor. Then the legislature votes to confirm them in May. That's how I found out, for some reason, the Alaskan state legislature doesn't keep a record of state appointment votes. See, back in May, when the normal confirmation hearing happened, Alaskan Governor Mike Dunleavy tried to push through Samantha Smith to the physician assistant seat on the state medical board, for which she received a maybe historic, again, they don't keep records, unanimous vote against her. First, because she's a physician's assistant at a chiropractor's office, not a real doctor, and fundamentally did not represent what a PA's normal work should be, but also because she literally violated HIPAA during her confirmation hearing and made it clear she was not merely a political appointee, which the medical board is 100%, but a dangerously rabid and incompetent one at that. So I honestly can't tell if the governor should have known about the investigation into his appointee, because I can find no proof that this dude was even confirmed in some secret special session back in August. And that's not even getting to some of the weirder reporting I found, which claims Ryan McDonough died in the fire. I think this is because everyone is referencing back to an Alaska Beacon article which claimed this in the headline but not the body, because per the last update from Alaska State Troopers, which I did check this morning, the autopsy is still pending and the cause of the fire is still under investigation. I must additionally regret to inform you, Ryan McDonough had 3 children. They and his wife are alive and well. I sincerely pray none among them were his alleged victims as well. And since we're mentioning prominent transphobes with direct links to CSAM, I should also bring up briefly, at least as briefly as I can manage, how the Trump administration, despite signing into law the Epstein release bill, missed the release deadline after Trump posted to Truth Social that he would not be complying. Again, with the law he signed just a few weeks ago after ordering congressional Republicans to back it, which many had not initially been on board with. When a small selection of the files were eventually released, they were heavily redacted, ostensibly to protect the victims, but seeing as many of them have had their names publicly dragged through the mud over the years, that holds less water. Especially when you notice many of the redactions are suspect, like this one, redacted showing only Michael Jackson's name, implying it's covering an incriminating image, except it's his lawyer's contact information. This file was released publicly in 2020. What I'm saying is, this release of only a small set of documents, which were supposed to be released fully, have been heavily redacted to protect those exploited by Epstein, but in truth were actually, in many cases, protecting the abusers of Epstein's victims, and by doing things like this, are just going to instill more conspiracy theorizing, which wasn't helped when the administration removed a further 14 pages from the documents after it became clear at least one showed Trump's name and signature on a giant novelty check given to Epstein. Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General, even did an interview on Meet the Press where he repeatedly said the 14 documents were taken down to protect the victims, aka the pictures of Epstein's victims, which were seen in a drawer of Trump's desk in some of the released files. Does anyone here know how to dig up? Does anyone? Or, better yet, throw the dirt on the creeps. Yes, I also include Bill Clinton in that. Look, I'm the one who did a story about the fact that he coercively raped his goddamn intern. Like, we're not here to stand Democrats. There wasn't any big tech news this week that felt worth the space. Not so much of a hound's bite this week. Just a reminder to do your dailies, call your reps. Heck, I guess I could do a super quick, mega special rapid fire ones. Fine. FIFA, fresh off having a federal investigation into them quashed after creating a Peace Prize for a doddering old fool, has partnered with Netflix. Strange, given that Netflix just closed down one game studio and has never successfully released a game, but... And Delphi Interactive, who've reportedly done an amount of work on that Bond game they just announced at the Keeleys like 2 weeks ago, and which, to my knowledge, no one's played, to make the next FIFA game out by next summer. Sure. Free for all Netflix subscribers, which to me kind of implies that it's going to be a mobile thing, but I don't know, we'll see. If you want an unhinged giggle at the lives of the obscenely wealthy and devoid of taste, or if you need to radicalize someone, go check out The Defector's 2025 Hater's Guide to the Williams-Sonoma catalog. It's a delight. The Indiana Attorney General, Todd Rocketa, has filed a lawsuit against a VPN company, ILO, for allegedly enabling users to circumvent the state's attempted porn ban and age verification nightmare in a legal argument equal parts pseudo-legality, twisty brainness, and some made-up crap he's pulling out of his ass. One of Anthropic AI's executives forced a gay Discord server he was a mod of to add Anthropic's AI chatbot, Claude, after they very soundly voted against letting it in. 404 has a great story on it, but yeah, they all left the server, so it's just him and his predictive keyboard talking back and forth about Christmas now. That's not a joke, that's just actually what they're doing. Additionally, the Wall Street Journal also had 2 different iterations of Claude run a vending machine, which is to say, an agentic, I hate this word because it's a dumb word, an agentic chatbot who could order things for the vending machine, but not stock them, take money, or even interact with the fridge and cabinet that were the vending machine in any possible way. Because the Wall Street Journal writers are not brain-boiled AI users or developers. They had Claude and the supervisory AI, which came along with the second version, giving out free PS5s, candy, snacks, free live fish within 2 days on both attempts. And yes, the Anthropic rep tried to make it sound like that's a good thing for his massive money-eating idiot godhead. Speaking of which, after the Larian CEO threw his big screaming tantrum over his studio's GenAI use and the Warhorse Studios co-founder joined in, 2 more game companies decided to throw their idiot hats into the blood-soaked ring while very clearly trying to make themselves feel better about it. CD Projekt Red, in an interview between Michael Nowowski, joint CEO of CDPR, and George Young of Games Radar, and Owlcat Games, the devs behind Rogue Trader, just tweeted it and then deleted this tweet to clarify and dig the hole even deeper with... It's basically the exact same tweet. It's just the people weren't yelling at them as much on it. I'll be honest, that was more stories than I thought I was going to get, and wow, current me probably hates past me for those images I had to make/find. Yes, I do. It's why this was so late. Actually, these ones were the easy part, but the number of images that I made for this episode was an issue. Look, I have one thing of rough vet visit stuff, so more cis folk have a better chance of seeing it and doing something, but then I've got 2 fun stories, okay? The bad part first. Brainworm Bobby Kennedy Jr. has effectively ended all CDC vaccine recommendations, once again following in lockstep with the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 plan. At a certain point, it would be nice if a Democrat would pretend to see that, but they're too busy letting Hakeem Jeffries kill a bill that would have actually ended congressional stock trading, while the House Democrats enabled 2 different healthcare bans for trans people. I can't stress this enough. Like with the bipartisan group trying to kill Section 230, the bipartisan group trying to push renewed focus on COSA, like the Republican obsession with making 29 million Americans pay more for healthcare so their top donors can take even more money out of your pocket by making the federal government pay them back tax, and Visa and MasterCard's tyranny over platforms, those of us affected by all of these, and those who care about us, need you to call your reps. And, well, I mean, we're already calling our reps, but look, I get that being aware sucks. Keeping track of all the shit these assholes are doing, keeping up with who you need to harangue into doing basic human decency sucks. But that's the point of democracy. We, the people, are supposed to use this system to demand our representatives represent our interests, not their own, not their donors, but their constituents. And if they don't, then we impeach them, we primary them, we vote them out of office. This system only actually works if we as a society care about each other and ourselves enough to stay on top of our representatives. Maybe paying attention to the ways they keep making it harder to do that would help. We're one of the only democracies on Earth where voting is effectively not a holiday and only takes part on one single day, where Republicans keep trying to make it harder to vote, harder to even survive. Just think about how much harder this last year has been, and try to imagine, even for a second, for the record, I'm assuming you're white and cis, apologies if not, try to imagine, even for a second, what it's like if you add on, no one will hire you because you're a girl who might or might not have a penis they'll never see, while an angry, sundowning man and his assortment of cronies try to blame every mass shooting done so often in his name on you and your kind, or the few cis people who don't want to see you dead, watching as even your supposed allies don't merely ask you to calm the tone of your activism, but to shut up as your previously established human rights are stripped away, because what if the same happened to someone else? Better than only we filthy transes suffer. For the record, I'd call myself a slur there, but YouTube and Twitch say that's only okay when a bigot does it to me, not when I do it to myself. Please, be you in a blue, red, or purple district, state, whatever, call your senators, call your congressperson, call your state legislature, your governor, your city council, your alderperson, and demand they stand for trans rights and our health care, as well as yours! Okay, fun science stories time. I'm sure you saw this headline floating around social media, right? I'm going to guess it probably came without the earth.com link, though. When I went and hunted it up, and the 2020 study that they were actually pulling the story from. It's actually pretty fascinating, but it's still annoying that no one was sharing the link and just the headlines. Why? Sadly, I can't seem to find a source for that bit about it being nicknamed The Thing, though if I had to bet, have something to do with the fact that the work on the egg was originally being done in 2020, when we were all nuts for a different reason. And let's be honest here, the kind of folks who work at an Antarctic research station are kinda unhinged. I should know. When I worked for Compass Group, they were convinced I'd be a great fit to take up one of the 8-month pastry chef gigs servicing one of those research stations. And just look how hinged I am. I really should have done it. Would have been really fun at like 23. I could have started my transition like 5 years early, done it in the frozen Antarctic waste with like 6 other people, and then come home acting like nothing had changed. Anyway, tangent over. So the 68-million-year-old egg does look pretty weird, but not for the usual reasons like odd pressure, tectonic stresses, any of that, but because it was a soft-shelled egg, which, after its inhabitant swam out, collapsed, looking, well, like a leather handbag. The odd look wasn't helped by it also being the largest egg ever found. Okay, technically the elephant bird's egg is a bit larger, but also has like a multi-inch thick mineral shell. Soft-shelled eggs aren't uncommon in modern egg-laying animals, especially reptiles, but there are almost none in the fossil record, though that's partially due to their rather obvious rapid decay. This one, however, seems to have been a vestigial egg, and it was quickly buried, preventing such decay. It's believed to have been laid by a 7-meter-long mosasaur, massive marine reptiles from the late Cretaceous period. They've long been suspected of actually being viviparous, which is to say, gave live birth. This doesn't by any means contradict existing evidence for many species, but does imply that at least one of the species, which once swam in the warmer Antarctic oceans of the Cretaceous, seemed to have developed young near viviparously before laying eggs, which would almost immediately hatch, tearing their way out slightly immediately after being born. Sure, technically mosasaurs aren't dinosaurs, but marine reptiles, but they're close enough for me. In case you've ever worried there's nothing left to discover, nature photographer Elio della Ferrera is here to disabuse you of that notion. While he was following a deer and, well, vultures in the Central Alps, surprisingly near where the 2026 Winter Olympic events will be held, well, at least some of them, Ferrera caught something strange in a shot of a vertical wall, and, like anyone wild enough to seek a job following deer and vultures in the freaking Alps, he scaled the rock wall to get a better look. God's bless nature photographers, I swear, having the self-preservation instincts of a baked potato is a prereq for the job. What Ferrera found were some at least 2,000 prosauropod prints from the late Triassic period. Prosauropods are the bipedal, much smaller, but still goofily long-necked precursors to the Cretaceous sauropods like the Diplodocus I mentioned last week on Muttday number 19. These tracks would have been laid between 252 and 201 million years ago, while that land had been tidal flats, which would have slowly been converted to rock as the Alps rose over the next several million years. And they're actually some of the first Triassic or even Mesozoic fossils found in the area, so extra neat, right? Damn it, dinosaurs are cool. Oh, by the way, it is actually like perfectly well, not perfectly, it is vertical because rocks shifting over time, especially as mountains grow up, is fascinating crap. And we get to pet play. There's a couple of cultural points I want to hit, but we're getting up to where my word count starts being dangerous, so I'll try and make this quick. Crossing my fingers. I feel like I've reported on some odd VTuber stuff before, because I think acting like VTubers aren't a normal foundational part of the larger streaming community is kind of a silly at best and insulting at worst perspective, and ends up with spaces and communities feeling sectioned off more than they should or really need to be. Thus, I feel it should be reported on about the same way any other public figure, if they were to, say, throw a bit of a fit when someone asks if their kind of fashy-inspired new outfit might look a bit too much like a Nazi uniform. But this time, I get to report on something where the VTuber at the center did nothing wrong, which is how you know I'm going to get yelled at by chuds for this story. And not just because the original reporter was Anna Valens, but definitely at least partially because of that too. Chuds do so hate trans women, but Anna Valens in particular. MAGfest, a con I admit to only knowing by reputation as the party con, invited the VTuber Vivi-chan as a featured guest, then promptly dropped her after some kind of backlash allegedly fomented in a private Discord and Facebook group based on a perception of her as a lollytuber. She is not. She is a petite Asian woman whose model is closely based on her own body, as she appeared as herself in public. There are literally pictures. Yeah, aside from the wings and her healthy habit of wearing masks, she just looks like her model. I even lined up the heights. She does not advertise herself as a lolly. She's gone out of her way to vehemently refute that she is a lollytuber for literal years. I swear if I see another man point out the boba and cat on her model's hoodie dress as though it's sexualizing. Again, an adult-ass woman, which, yeah, by the way, petite and short Asian women, hell, short and petite women, period, are allowed to sexualize themselves if they want. Rather than the Family Guy level of constant low-grade lewd joke we all make near constantly now, I will explode. The real issue is MAGfest's marketing copy was written as though someone thought she was a lollytuber, an interpretation Vivi-chan has, again, vehemently opposed for literally years. Seriously, give it a read. They're trying to reference the fact that she's been VTubing as Vivi-chan for 5 years, but did so with such poor phrasing and childish framing, I would bet dollars to donuts whoever wrote this copy did it on purpose, not to say maliciously, merely intentionally, either not knowing she isn't a lollytuber, but writing about her that way without checking, or actively ignoring the reality for their own preferred perspective, or MAGfest had a generative AI write this because it's using the same creepy groomer language many LLMs are trained to deploy when they interpret the person they're referencing to be a child. Just to stress this again. Vivi-chan, an adult, petite Asian woman whose model is closely based on her real-life body, was invited to MAGfest, then removed after an alleged backlash which arose in response to the disingenuous way MAGfest marketed her as something she has spent years defending herself against being. Then they blamed her washing their hands of the affair. MAGfest? Fuck y'all. It's 2025. You should have been prepared to defend any woman who you invite from misogynistic bigotry. Not chum the fucking waters, then throw her to the sharks. After sweeping the Game Awards, Clair Obscur almost swept the Indie Game Awards too. In fact, it technically did. Shortly after the awards were finalized, the devs, Sandfall, finally confirmed the worst kept secret in gaming, since it wasn't a secret, and they merely tried to beat around the bush in an interview back in July about their generative AI placeholder images, which made it into the final game without Steam's AI use disclosure attached. Yes, indeed, they did use generative AI to make elements of Expedition 33. And since, unlike the Keeleys, the Indie Game Awards have standards, Expedition 33 was retroactively disqualified for violating and hiding that they'd done so knowingly, the Indie Game Awards No AI rule. The runner-up, Blue Prince, took the prize and frankly deserves more accolades this year. That game wags and will give you some fascinating brainworms, especially if you can play it around the same time as a friend. You will both end up convinced you found some absurd niche detail for an obscure puzzle, which sounds completely conspiracy-brained at first blush, but every other one of them will turn out to be true. Of course, where there are scruples, there must also be the unscrupulous. After the Indie Game Awards stood by their guns, former site of both some of the best and worst games journalism of the aughts and 2010s, but which now needs a responsible gambling guide in their footer. The Escapist ran a now edited and... Look, this is not how you do a retraction. People are trying to call it a retraction. They updated the story and made it so that it doesn't come up when you search that specific author's bibliography on Escapist anymore. That's not a retraction. It's still up. They've just added an update. Story on how the award poll was cowardly, baseless, and hypocritical when they then went on to libel Dongubomb, the Blue Prince devs, claiming that team used generative AI. Blue Prince didn't use generative AI. It does have an AI director of the sort Valve's Left 4 Dead popularized to instill a level of controlled randomness back in 2008. You know, like NPC AI as opposed to generative AI, which is actually an incredibly and intentionally poor name for large language models conflated with intelligence by its proponents to hide the fact that it literally cannot achieve intelligence. I'm not going to name the writer responsible, not because I don't think she deserves to be called out for journalistic malpractice, but because I don't trust the chud-filled internet to take the right lesson from this and expect that they'd like an excuse to harass a woman in games journalism. She fucked up. But this is not Olivia Nuzzi getting a dangerous science denier into the health and human secretary seat, but a symptom of the rot which has taken hold of games journalism. The writer's been working in games journalism for quite a while and has worked adjacent to, though not super directly with, Anna Valens. Yes, I'm referencing her in 2 stories this week. So I asked her, and I think her point, you'll see in a little bit, is key in conjunction with the progressive purchasing of journalism by the nouveau riche tech gentry like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, or outright gambling pushers, as heretical Aeris pointed out and referred to under a name I adore, digital skin suiting, which I would also point out Atari has been sort of doing insofar as everyone keeps buying Atari and then wearing the name like a skin suit. But yeah, as an aside, heretical Aeris is running a GoFundMe to secure safe housing for herself and a friend, link in the description, please go check that out. As for Anna's point, the writer of the Blue Prince's used AI story is a product of the games journalism environment, which has long before now prioritized clicks, the speed of one's reporting, and SEO optimization over accurate, factual information. Despite being a career games journalist, the author of the piece has never worked at a journalistic outfit which prioritized, much less instilled, journalistic integrity or rigor. But the places she worked, Team Liquid, .esports, Esports Insider, esports.gg, were the rule, not the exception, which has made games journalism uniquely vulnerable to this kind of capture. Sure, some folks with scruples exist in the space, but we are few and far between. Largely as a practice of making sure we're not paid for that extra effort it takes to report on issues factually and carefully, but instead focused entirely on paying us based on speed. Once again, the gaming journalism space was used as a testbed for a wider plague now infecting all news media, as gambling prediction markets like Polymarket posture at being news themselves, while others like Closhy parasitize the CBS and CNN newsrooms. And then Barry fucking Weiss walked up to drive the final nail into the journalistic coffin as I was writing this story last night, before lighting it on fire to make 1200% sure it was really dead. If you missed it, Barry Weiss killed a 60-minute segment on CSOT, the death and torture camp in El Salvador Trump sold Americans to be raped, beaten, and tortured to death at. Barry killed the segment because, well, she's an upstanding journalist who refused to let it air without comment from the Trump administration. Their refusal to comment is a key aspect of the story, but Weiss would know that were she a journalist, not a far-right op-ed columnist lovingly caressing the authoritarian hand operating her like a damn puppet. And were I less kind, I'd say she does know the lack of comment is key to the story, and she's doing exactly what that authoritarian hand demands, killing a story about this administration's human rights abuses with only the barest pretense of justification. Support independent journalists in all industries, because I'm honestly not sure if any mainstream media is going to survive this. Maybe I'll feel less weird covering game news. I'm going to end pet play and the scripted section of this episode with one final note, because I wasn't sure where to put it. But culture news works fine, I suppose. I've personally never understood why Christians use the cross as their iconography. It's always felt a little weird to use one's Messiah's method of incredibly slow, torturous execution as the symbol of your faith to me. And I guess it's sort of rude to point out that it did make sense when Christians were kind of a niche death cult, but they're not that anymore. So I guess it still sort of makes sense for like evangelical accelerationists because they are a death cult, but it feels odd for everyone else to me. I've never understood it. Then Turning Point USA at their fucked up little convention decided to show me exactly why. This is the same convention where Erica Kirk came out wearing full gold sequin pageant regalia to reaffirm her endorsement of the weird and hateful man-sized baby with a beard, better known as the couch fucker, also rumored, unsubstantiated, to be having an affair with the recently widowed woman. Set up a recreation of the Prove Me Wrong booth where Charlie Kirk was shot and killed by an alleged groiper barely 3 months ago? Attendees reportedly waited in line with bated breath to take selfies with the murder scene? I mean, I guess we now know how you start a death cult in the modern era. Why you'd want to, I don't know, but yeah. I do not have a good plan for schedule this week because it's the holidays and I have no idea if I'm even trying to do anything. So we'll find out together. If you're in the Discord, you can join that to find out better. If you're watching on YouTube, it's down in the description. Yeah. I that's really about it. I do intend on doing a Muttday next Monday. We'll see. It will very much depend on how much life or energy is left in me. And, you know, how much dumb crap I do this week. I have a bunch of videos that I actually need to get out because they're done or they're recorded, but I need to edit them that I have not had time in the past, like, week or two. So, yeah. I will hopefully get this up on YouTube fairly quickly since I did all the shenanigans with the images ahead of time, and I mostly didn't need to redo line reads. But, yeah. Thank you all so very much for joining me. I hope you all have had a very good time. I might just call it, because I'm also... This is really warm, but I didn't want to get called out for wearing the nightgown. So, yeah. I might just call it then. I will see you all hopefully very soon. Oh, right. By the way, tonight in the Discord, we're watching Muppet Christmas Carol. There will probably be other movies too. We're starting with Muppet Christmas Carol because it good. And I feel like I remembered someone saying that they hadn't seen it yet. And I don't remember who or why, but yeah, have a great night all day, whatever time zone it is for you all. And I will see you soon. Bye.